Hi, I'm Loris Alexander. This is Bridge City News, and here are some of the stories we've been following. A country music legend passes away at age 86. Plus, a surge in the number of U.S. churches committing to racism-linked reparations. And Lethbridge police are on the lookout for impaired drivers this Christmas season.
Your nation. Your province. Your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Thanks for joining us. Charlie Pride, a country music superstar, passed away at age 86 on Saturday in Dallas, Texas. Pride, who released dozens of albums and sold more than 25 million records, died from complications due to COVID-19.
I got listening to Grand Ole Opry, when I was small, and I got hooked on it, and it just went from there. I had no idea that I was preparing myself for this, but I'm glad. But the big thing was promoters was very, very reluctant to book me, and but it finally came around. Male vocalist and entertainer year 1971, and after that, I followed Elvis in 1971.
Pride was raised in Sledge, Mississippi, the son of a sharecropper. Before launching his music career, he was a pitcher and an outfielder in the Negro American League. His last performance was at the CMA Awards in November.
Initiatives by the Episcopal Diocese of Maryland and Minnesota Council of Churches reflect a surge of interest among U.S. religious groups in racism-linked reparations this year.
I am so proud of this church for committing some of its financial resources to building up impoverished Black communities.
If churches don't lead the way, I don't know who else will.
We have not retreated into the past.
Why is the church doing this? And of course, I say, why not? Especially the church should be. It was religious groups that helped lead the civil rights movement. And it was Christians and Jews and Muslims and people of no faith at all coming together for that. But this is a moral problem that this nation has.
But these are deep historic issues that require more than marching. Marching is important, protest is important, but we're going to have to, this is a long-term process that's going to be required. And that's when our board members began to talk about the idea of reparations.
We will never get to full reconciliation in America until we address this issue of why are millions and millions of persons still entrapped in poverty and predominantly Black and brown communities. It's not an accident. It wasn't their fault. It's not from lack of initiative. It's that the system put it that way.
To me, it's not successful if there isn't actually some investment happening, whether it's the return of land or in cultural spaces or actual investment in Black families, in housing and in college education, and however it plays out. But there has to be, it's not enough just to do the truth telling and hope that somehow inspires folks to do right.
The COVID-19 pandemic may put a damper on the Christmas season, but Lethbridge police are on the lookout for those who do go out to celebrate and fail to act responsibly. Video journalist Naveen Day visited a check stop Saturday night to learn more about stiffer penalties you will face if you get caught driving while impaired.
Lethbridge Police kicked off its 2020 Christmas Check Stop campaign Saturday night in an effort to curb impaired driving. This is also the first year the police are armed with new sanctions under Bill 21, which allows them to administer stiffer penalties roadside.
Acting Sergeant Brent Paxman with the police's Traffic Response Unit says the new legislation will minimize paperwork and allow more time to enforce impaired driving laws.
The new impaired laws will allow us to stay on the road more and deal with impaired drivers a bit quicker because there's no actual arrest there. And so it's what we call a roadside sanction, and we can deal with everything inside our police vehicle and release them without ever having to go back to the station.
Some of the penalties include new fines up to $2,000, increased length of vehicle seizure for certain offenses, and repeat offenders may see new mandatory education programs, increased license suspensions, and an expanded mandatory ignition interlock program. Anita Huchala, who is president of the Lethbridge and area chapter of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, says she hopes the new laws will help people to take a second to think before they plan to drive.
We're always hopeful that people are going to be staying home and try to remain safe and that sort of thing. But there are going to be those people that do feel that they want to go out and still celebrate throughout the season, just as like they did any time throughout the rest of the year. But it makes it difficult for us to fathom that people want to put everybody at risk and be out like that.
For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
The province's new restrictions are having a negative impact on many businesses, including our restaurants. We caught up with the owners of Hickory Street in Sterling, Alberta, who discussed how the second lockdown will affect their business.
I understand why the government did it, and I think we need to take some drastic measures, but I'm really sad that it's taking such a dig at businesses and small businesses at Christmas.
Bone says right now is crucial for businesses to make a plan going forward. That's what her family did following the first lockdown earlier this year.
We said if this ever happens again, this is what we're going to do. So it's here again, and so I think we have these 4 weeks to build our following, to just rely on those people, our loyal customers, and really make a plan going forward, because 4 weeks, I think, is a pretty optimistic view.
Delivery comes at a time when a global pandemic has made it a necessary part of life, but simultaneously has left small businesses like Hickory Street struggling with logistics and high costs.
What you don't realize is that most of those companies take at least 20 to 30% of that bill. Restaurants run on a razor-thin margin, and if we're lucky, we have a 10% profit. So where that 20 to 30% is coming from, I don't know. And so we would highly encourage you to get out and go to the restaurant and pick up your food safely.
Despite yesterday's announcement, the Bones are staying optimistic and are encouraging other business owners and patrons to do the same, supporting each other in the process.
Everybody is suffering at some point right now, and if anything, if you can spend $5 at a local business or $10, that might help keep the lights on. It might help pay their rent. So, and honestly, business owners, it really helps to see people once in a while, or get those little texts or get those messages. It's nice to see and just know that we're doing a good job and people are seeing it.
The Lethbridge Soup Kitchen will officially become part of the Mustard Seed effective March of 2022. The Soup Kitchen will eventually discontinue food service at its current site when the Mustard Seed opens at its new location in downtown Lethbridge.
We became aware that Mustard Seed was going to come to this city to set up a sober shelter, along with some supportive housing options. And one of the things that was part of that contract with the government was to provide meals, 3 meals a day. And we started talking, well, we do 3 meals a day. And so then my suggestion, well, why don't we merge? And so they accepted that. Our board voted 100% in favor, as did theirs. And so we are just excited to be joining them in the near future. We don't know exact dates yet. There's some issues to resolve around a location and acceptable location, but it will happen, and we are just thrilled. We think it's wonderful.
Samaritan's Purse mobile medical teams are using helicopters to reach villages in Honduras that have been cut off from help due to flooding from back-to-back hurricanes.
Not only are we bringing them the medication and the treatments that they need, but they've been through a very traumatic situation. 2 storms hitting in a short period of time. But when you see the looks on their face when the helicopter lands on a soccer field in a mudded out, flooded village, that's hope coming on the helicopter. And I love to be a part of that and to be the hands that bring Jesus to a village that's hurting. Please continue praying for the people of Honduras and our disaster assistance response team doing the work of Jesus here in this location.
Recapping one of our top news stories, the COVID-19 pandemic may put a damper on the Christmas season, but Lethbridge police are on the lookout for those who do go out to celebrate and fail to act responsibly. Drivers could face stiffer penalties if they get caught driving while impaired. And taking a look at weekend weather, we're capping off a very cold weekend, but thankfully the week looks quite a bit warmer. An overnight low of minus 15 degrees is expected with a 30% chance of flurries. But on Monday, skies clear up and the sun comes out, so we should get up to a high of minus 6 degrees. Coming up after the break, BCN's Jeanette Roche chats with the founder and executive director of Mentoring Warriors on coaching young men for success.
Did you know that young men between the ages of 18 and 30 are vulnerable to premature death? Unintentional injury, suicide, and homicide are the leading causes of death for young men. According to our next guest, culture is sending mixed messages about what masculinity is all about, as many young men are picking up their cues from the media. David Riffle is the founder and executive director of Mentoring Warriors, an organization committed to equipping men to mentor other young men. He's also the author of Mentoring Warriors, coming alongside men 18 to 30 years old. He joins us now via Skype from Wichita, Kansas. David, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be online with you.
Now, David, you paint a very bleak picture here that young men seem to be adrift in our culture. What's going on?
Well, I think deep down, I think one of the issues that's happening with young men is we can say it's a lack of purpose, lack of direction. I think when I think about this question, the realization is that in some respects, if you look at history and you look even into biblical times, there's always been this issue of men pouring into the next generation. And it seems like in our culture now, we've become very siloed. I mean, even my generation, we're always thinking only about ourselves. And as a result of that, that younger generation doesn't have an older, mature people speaking into them. So they're basically kind of adrift, trying to figure out ways to ask for help. And I know some of the struggles that some of the men, when they lose that hope, they tend to move towards suicide. In a couple of cases, in my situation in mentoring, I've seen that happen where, I've been working with a young man and life kind of falls apart for him. He struggles in areas like pornography and things. And the next thing you know, I'm getting a text saying, "Hey, can you keep a secret?" And I'm like, "Well, it depends on what the secret is." And he says, "I have a gun." Well, when things like that happen, you can't keep those things a secret. And thankfully, in that situation, we're able to intervene and get him some help that he needs. But I think a lot of times it's that lack of, and I'm saying this is one factor in it, but that lack of older men speaking into the lives of younger guys. That would be one of the reasons why I think it's happening.
Yeah, that's actually that's staggering. Now, the suicide rate for young men is 3.5 times higher than it is for young women. So, and you kind of explained a little bit of what you made of this, but what do you make of this?
Well, in terms of like, what do you do? Well, it's obviously the idea, I believe, that it's that investing in young men to give them some direction and some purpose, not telling them what to do, but, in a real sense, helping them find out what is I call it their unique kingdom voice. How's God wired them? How are they made? And generally what I find with young guys is there's kind of like 6 basic areas that we tend to want to talk through. 18 to 30, we call that the warrior stage of life because they're in that stage where they're moving out of adolescence. Some of them are leaving home to go to university. Maybe they're getting married, but there's so many choices that are being made in that age and those 10, 12 years. And a lot of those kind of topics we go through when we mentor. And so what I did in my book is I teamed with Wichita State University to do some qualitative research on, well, what does it take to have a healthy mentoring relationship with guys in that age range? And so with their research and with some of my own experiences in writing, I've written about 6 basic areas that guys deal with, and then how do you walk them through those areas of life?
So what are the biggest challenges young men say that they're dealing with?
Well, if I kind of just talk through those things, first one would be like self-management. Some guys, it's just getting up on time. It's learning how to have self-control and in those areas, or it's financial management. Sometimes a guy will call me up and say, "Hey, Mr. Riffle, could you loan me about $100?" Well, well, it depends on what we're doing this $100 for, kind of thing. So self-management is a real issue of learning what's real priorities. And often it's not what their priorities were when they were in their adolescence. It needs to shift. Another area that we talk about a lot is life skills. And I always joke and say, we can go to YouTube to figure out how to fix something, but there's something to be said about having somebody who is experienced in whether it's fixing the car or changing out a toilet or even learning how to shoot a gun or whatever it is, to have somebody older to come alongside you to really kind of show you something that, to be honest, you just can't learn online necessarily. So life skills. A third one's a really big one. Education and career. What in the world am I going to be when I grow up? I'll give you an example of one young guy. He went into mechanical engineering because, well, that's what his dad did. And he discovered pretty quickly he hated math. It just was not his deal. And so through conversations, many conversations with me, a lot of prayer, a lot of discussions with his career counselors at the university, he switched over to graphic design and figured out that not only does he enjoy that so much better, but he realizes that's exactly how God's wired him. In fact, is our Mentoring Warriors logo he developed, So education and career, and there's two kind of paths in that. One is the professional. Now, I'm actually an architect. My son is in medical school. So you go to professional, you learn a track and you do that. But there's others that don't. They go to maybe have more of a liberal arts degree, and that's perfectly fine. It's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of times in those searches, there's a lot of different careers that a young man has to go through to figure out exactly who they are. So we talk a lot about education and career. Another one, the fourth one we talk about is faith. And if a young man has grown up in a church, a lot of times he goes out on his own, and typically warriors are the least likely population to attend church or to be involved in any kind of faith. Not always, but that tends to be it. They tend to go off and they really have to wrestle with the question is this my parents' faith? Is it my faith? What do I really believe? And so a lot of times there's wrestling that goes through that. And I've seen some young men that will, from a head perspective, acknowledge who Christ is, but they're walking out. Like I said, they're orbiting around Jesus, but they're way out there in Pluto somewhere, But we walk through issues of faith to help them figure out what do they really believe. And then a couple more that we always are dealing with is relationships. I like to say it this way. God's wired men for relationships. And it says all the way back in the book of Genesis that a man's going to leave his father and mother and cling to his wife. And a lot of times that movement out of mom and dad's house is whether it's a university or getting a career or a job and an apartment, but it's the idea of moving towards relationships. One of the young guys that I mentor just got engaged on Sunday. And, he's 20 years old, but we've had a lot of conversations about what relationships look like. So learning how young men can start thinking like a husband, how to date and pursue a woman. The other part of relationships in that area too is the issue of separating or letting go from mom and dad, and just having healthy relationships in that area. And then the sixth one, or the last one, is what we call it manhood identity. What does it mean to be a man? Does it mean I wear certain clothes and drive a truck? Or what does it mean? There's so many different identities of what a man is like. But when you look at it, it really comes down to character. And it really comes down to what does God say that a man ought to be? A man that would be one who wants to be defined by who God says a man ought to be in terms of character and and how he treats people. And then related to that a lot is our conversations about purity. And obviously, we know that statistically speaking, a lot of young men in that age, a vast majority struggle in areas of purity and pornography. And so we do some things with Mentoring Warriors to help guys work through those issues, to help them with accountability. So when you're asking kind of the questions about men needing direction in that area, typically it's going to be in those roughly 6 areas that more or less they're going to need help and they need some guidance.
Mm-hmm. So, David, you mentioned you're an architect by trade. So how did a professional architect get involved with mentoring young men like this?
Yeah, I always tease I'm an architect by day and I'm mentor by night. But reality is, the story kind of starts maybe roughly about 10 years ago. Our son was about 14 at the time. I think he was in grade 9. And the church we were attending, the way they did their youth, all the guys would be in a small group together and the gals separately by gender. And so a lot of times they would come over to our house, play ball, and then go downstairs and have a Bible study. And there was a couple new young guys, and our church had this opportunity an adult could sign up to be a prayer warrior for a young man. So I thought, well, there's 2 new boys in the youth group, and I'll just get to know them. So I did that, and over time we could swap texts for praying, and maybe we'd go fishing or do hangout or do something. And as they grew up, I realized that they started confiding in me on struggles that they had, whether it's about girls or purity or parents or just any sort of things. And I realized that I had become kind of a safe place for them. So that began to make me realize I started getting kind of some of their friends wanting me to meet up with their buddies too on kind of similar issues. So about that time, roughly about 5 years ago, right after my daughter's wedding, I unexpectedly had quadruple heart bypass surgery. So all I can tell you is when a guy's in his 50s and you have heart surgery, it really kind of rocks your world. It's like, why am I here? So I really put me on this last 5 years has put me on kind of a search for God, why do you have me here? And I realized that there's a significant impact that can be done on young guys. So that's where I teamed with Wichita State and I ended up writing a book. And now it's formed into a ministry that we call Mentoring Warriors. And so here in the States, we have our 501c3 and we have a board of directors and things like that. And it's really been fun, exciting to see how God's impacting other people. So that's how I kind of got started into it.
That's awesome. So what happened to you as a young man, David, that had a profound impact on your life?
I always say in my book, I was essentially mentorless. And it wasn't like I didn't have a dad or had people speak into my life, but there was probably more through my teens and my early 20s. There was probably a need that I see in hindsight. I could have benefited from having a mentor where some of my own insecurities, some of my own struggles that I felt like I was the only guy on the planet, facing those, that had I had a mentor, it probably would have helped me get a little more stabilized in some of those earlier years. And so I think through that own mentorless experiences in my own life, I think God really put on to me a heart for mentoring young guys. I just have an ache for them,
Mm-hmm.
just really want to see them become young men that really can kind of rise up into their manhood.
Yeah. So what are the qualifications of a good mentor and how does one become one?
Well, I always say, a mentor is imperfectly humble. You don't have to be perfect. I've had so many conversations with older guys like, well, I don't have my act together. And I'm like, the fact that you don't have your act together, but you're willing to allow God to kind of work and father you through those makes you greatly qualified to be a mentor. So not this arrogant, well, let me teach you how it's going to be, boy. It's not that kind of attitude at all, but it's his humility that says, you know what, hey, I'm a work in progress too. I understand. I was there when I was 25 or whatever age. Let me kind of identify with you. I want to hear what your story is, and I'm willing to walk with you. So I would think underlying everything, being humble is really good. I think from a biblical Christian perspective, I think understanding the gospel to the point where when Jesus says in the Great Commission, hey, we're going to go make disciples, mentoring is part of making disciples. And so that would be something really important, I think, is a good qualification. I know some people ask me, well, what do you do when you go mentor? Well, there's three things that I think help make effective mentoring. One of them is always, 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 in one form or another, when you get together with a young guy, spend some time in the Word. And that could be anything from a formal Bible study to just sharing some verses that you've memorized, or working through just some stuff in your head in terms of what God has to say about certain things in life, but engage God's word somehow in the conversation. A second thing, always, 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 is spend some time praying together. And, not just God bless my day, but God, are there some areas of my heart, or there areas of my life that you can father me in? And just kind of spend some time doing it. It doesn't have to be a long time, but just that engaging back and forth in prayer. And then the third one, which is super important, go do something fun together. Go do something you like. And like I pick on shooting guns, or maybe it's going fishing or hiking or camping, or whatever it is that the two of you like to do, just go have fun together. Because this is not just some program. This is about building a relationship, is really what it is. So those are some things that I think really help for making effective mentoring.
That's awesome. And you know what, David? I wish I could spend more time talking to you, but it looks like we're about out of time. So David Riffle, author of Mentoring Warriors, coming alongside men 18 to 30 years old. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
As many as 40 million people were out of work, downsized, laid off, or simply fired shortly after the economic shutdown this year due to COVID-19. Once thriving businesses, small and large, are now struggling to survive. Our next guest knows all too well what it feels like to be out of work. And if you find yourself in this unfortunate situation, she's here to tell you about some very important steps you need to take immediately after you lose a job. Mary Carto's passion to reach out and uplift the millions of unemployed and underemployed people worldwide has increased since the publication of her devotional books, Help for the Laid Off and Hope for the Laid Off. Mary Carto joins me now via Skype from her home in Houston, Texas. Mary, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I very much appreciate it.
Yeah, it's lovely to have you. Now, Mary, you understand firsthand what it feels like to go from happily employed to finding yourself out of work, not once, but actually twice, right? So, Mary, can you maybe talk about what you experienced and share your story with our viewers?
Oh, for sure. I was a single mom during both layoffs. The first one was in the early 90s, lasted exactly 2 years. I learned so much about everything. I learned how to survive, not only survive, but thrive with joy as a single mom for 2 years. At the end of the first 2-year layoff, not only did I get a job, I got the career change of my dreams without a college degree, without training, without a foot in the door. Okay, that's crazy. A layoff can be and often is one of the best things that can happen to someone. It depends on their response. Okay, got my job, 8 years went by, having the time of my life doing what I was born to do. Got laid off again out of the clear blue sky. 3 weeks after my second layoff, I fell 16 feet out of a tree.
What?
I broke myself. What was I doing in the tree? I was trying to prune the tree myself. I fell 16 feet off the top rung of my ladder. A single mom has to do what a single mom has to do. When you don't have a job, you don't have money, you don't have a boyfriend, you do what you have to do. A week later, I'm in my home office. I'm in such pain and I'm crying and I'm like, God, are you kidding me? Really? Why would you allow me to be laid off again? And why would I have this accident? I mean, what is the purpose? And boom, it was like, write a book about trusting me during a layoff. That's how Help for the Laid Off came to be written, quite frankly. Anything can happen during a layoff. It really depends on your response. So I learned a lot during the second layoff as well. So
That's amazing. Now, you've said that yourself that you didn't see it coming, and most people in that situation don't see it coming, right? But now that you've been through this a couple of times, do you have any advice for someone facing a job loss? I'm sure it's really a scary time for them.
the first thing I would recommend is allow yourself to feel all the gamut of emotions that you're feeling. It's very normal. You're going to feel anger, resentment, stress, worry, loss, anxiety, all of those things. The important thing is you cannot allow yourself to get stuck in any one of those any one of those emotions, especially self-pity. Your job is to find a job, okay? And you need to find someone reliable and trustworthy that you can talk to, maybe a friend, maybe a relative, maybe a pastor. Another thing I recommend, I don't know if y'all have these in Canada, but in the United States, you could Google, it's called Unemployment Ministry or Job Support Group.
Okay.
You can go there and join those. The benefit of finding a job support group in your area is not only are you get aware of available jobs, but they offer free counseling. They offer resume editing. They offer coaching, interview skills, all for free by volunteers. Exercise is critical. It really releases your anxiety, things like that. I'm a writer, so putting things on paper, imagine writing whatever you're thinking or feeling and knowing that nobody else is going to see it. That is beyond therapeutic. One of the other things I learned to do, and it's very goofy, but I learned to barter for services. Now, listen, think about that. As a woman, you've got to look top notch when you go to a job interview. Am I right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So I learned, I offered to babysit my hairdresser's infant son if she would cut and style my hair the morning of an interview. Now, if you're a mom, finding someone that you can trust with your baby, that's big. That's like huge. So that was a win-win situation. I did not have to financially pay $100 to get my hair done, but I got it done. And she was able to enjoy a night out with her husband. Another example, I have a friend whose elderly mother had knee surgery and had to go to physical therapy 3 times a week. And this was during my second layoff. So times were very shaky back then. She was scared to death of losing her job.
Right.
I had all the time in the world. I took her mother to physical therapy for 6 weeks, 3 times a week for 6 weeks. She paid my utilities for that amount of time.
Oh, wow.
So you can get your needs met, but you got to speak up. People are not mind readers.
Right. You got to be a little creative too, it sounds like.
For sure, for sure. You do what you have to do. And it was fun.
Oh, I'm sure. Now, you've put together some steps that every person should take immediately when they lose a job. And I know you've mentioned some that are very helpful, but what can somebody do immediately afterwards?
File for unemployment. That's the first obvious thing. Also, the more you get out of the house, wear a mask, but if you can go out and volunteer, make your story known. The more you are out in the world helping people, the more opportunities you have to share your story. You never know who knows who and who's going to bring the right tip to you. I also believe in praying and having a gratitude journal. I heard it said, what would it be like if you woke up tomorrow morning with only the people and things that you remembered to be thankful for the night before? That had a profound effect on me. I mean, just think about it. So you may not have a job, but you have your health, you have family, you have friends. you've got a roof over your head. So another thing, this was really hard for me to learn, but swallow your pride and ask for help. Even you think your family and your friends, they want to help you, but it's very uncomfortable on the other side. I learned this after being laid off. It's very uncomfortable for them. So if you just say, listen, this is what I need. This is what I need. And just be very honest. And if they can help you, great. And if not, move on and find someone that can. One thing I mentioned during my first layoff, I had the career change in my dreams, but I had to work for it. Meanwhile, I looked for jobs that I had been doing for 20 years. I had a resume for that, but I also created a separate resume focusing on the skills that would highlight towards the job, the kind of jobs I wanted. That way, I needed a job no matter what. I would take any job that came and then continue to look for the job I really wanted. So, I mean, you do what you have to do. And I took a lot of jobs that were very underpaying, very quote beneath me. But you know what? When you're out of everything, your pride goes out the window, and that's a very good lesson. And I'm glad for that lesson.
Yeah, and I mean, you got to do what you got to do, like you said. And we're talking about looking for alternative sources of income, and sometimes you just have to do that, right?
I sold a lot of things. I had a lot of garage sales. As a single mom, I had to cash out my 401k, and I took like a 30% tax hit. That really hurt, but I obviously lived. I had the support of friends and family and church, and so yeah.
Yeah. Now, Mary, do you have any tips for anyone needing to radically reduce their expenses and change their lifestyle, just kind of like change their whole household budget to adapt to their new reality?
Well, get rid of cable, get rid of your house line, and just have your cell phone. An alternative would be if you needed to have your phone for internet, then get rid of your cell phone. I don't know if surely you have libraries there. Get your entertainment and your books and your movies from the library for free. Why pay if you don't have to? Also, the libraries have computers. You can go and do your job search for free at the library. Scale down what you like to eat. Learn to cook very frugally. We had tuna macaroni casserole more times than I can count. If you need someone to take care of your pet while you're unemployed, let them adopt your pet temporarily. Shop at Goodwill, shop at used clothing stores. Get rid of the cable TV, get rid of the things that you do not need. Another thing that for any parents that are listening, my daughter was 9 to 11 during my first layoff. I really thought as a parent I would die. I thought I was the worst mother in the world because I couldn't get her school photos. I couldn't get her the band. It hurt me as a parent.
Yeah.
But I'm here to tell you, my daughter, she'll tell you today, she's a 38-year-old military wife, mom of 2. She did not know that she was suffering back then. She said, Mom, I never felt neglected. I never felt like I was doing without. And she learned how to create a budget, how to stick to a budget. She learned she's not who she is. She's not who she is based on what she looks, what kind of car she drives, what she's wearing. She learned the value of a dollar. She learned the difference between need and want. What kind of good parent doesn't want their kids to learn those hard life lessons? Well, they're not going to learn them on Easy Street.
Right.
They're just not. And so she's grateful that she went through those hard times, and you come out a better, stronger, more compassionate person.
And it probably brought you two closer because you spent so much more time together, which in a kid's eyes, that's all they really want from their parent, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And during my second layoff, she was, oh, don't make me do the math. I know she was 19 at one point. She actually worked and helped pay some of my bills without being asked. So
Wow.
what kind of a kid does that?
Yeah, exactly. No.
And she learned that through you learn through those hard times of adversity. You just do.
Mary, what sort of feedback have you received from people who have read your 3 books?
Thank you for asking that. I actually have developed a lot of friendships since the first book was published. It's very rewarding when people contact me via email or Skype, phone, Zoom, whatever. They'll say, Mary, I want you to know I found a job. I started a business. I was doing this, but I thought of you. And it's like, I took your advice. The thing is, just because you've been doing A all of your life, I know you need a job, and if that's the next job, go for it. But you don't have to always be doing that. You can go for what you want. Be bold, be courageous. What do you have to lose? President Trump says, what do you have to lose? I mean, it's just true. What would have happened if I had not gone for my dream? I wouldn't have had it. If you don't ask, the answer will for sure be no.
Well, that's true. There you go. Lots of fantastic advice in all of your books, including like how to land a job interview and all kinds of stuff. I wish we had all day to talk about this, but it looks like we're running out of time, Mary. But appreciate having you on our show. Mary Cardo, author of Hope for the Laid Off, Help for the Laid Off, and Prayers for the Laid Off. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.
Trying to navigate your teen years isn't always easy, especially in today's world of social media. Today's teens seem to face so many more challenges than they ever have before. My next guest has started a new business endeavor called Bold and Brave to help empower youth to find their voice, their value, and their self-respect, among other things, of course. Dana Holland, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. Very excited to be here.
Awesome. So, Dana, I have to say you are very brave to be starting up a business in this COVID environment when so many others are shutting their doors. You're taking on a whole new endeavor. So congratulations, by the way. You really are bold and brave.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So Dana, tell me, what is Bold and Brave all about? How did you start it?
Well, Bold and Brave is basically a program that is meant to really help youth. And I guess in turn, it's something that's for everyone. How I look at things is that if you are able to encourage the youth that are around us, there will be a ripple effect. So it'll affect their siblings, their family, their friends, and eventually the community. There's really no stopping these kids. They're going to continue to move forward. And so if we can provide things that build their confidence, I really felt that was super important here at this time.
How did you get the idea for it? Are you thinking back to your own youth, perhaps?
There's a portion of that. I know that to me, there wasn't a lot of things that I could go to or that I was confident in looking into, I guess. I wanted to make Bold and Brave something that anyone felt they could go to, felt that they could reach out to, felt they could be part of that community. And it's very much an all-inclusive program, community business. I've been able to speak at a few different programs, which I loved, and I was grateful that they were here and that there's lots of different programs around the city. And I really give accolades to all the people who have gone before me, who help youth. I think that that's an amazing thing and an amazing endeavor. And I just felt there was some things that were being missed. And that's kind of where Bold and Brave came in. I wanted to kind of hit the niches and the different kids that maybe other programs weren't hitting, or maybe they weren't as in the media as much. Maybe they aren't known. And I felt like we could work together within the community, and maybe I pass on people and let them know, hey, there's these other programs, with the whole goal of working together to build kids.
So how does the program work exactly?
So right now, being that, like you stated, it's during the COVID time, so a lot of people don't know who I am. They don't know why I'm here. They're just saying you're just a new person who wants to meet with my kids. So for me, during COVID, we wanted to start out with doing some workshops and putting out basically the information and what we're trying to teach. So um, there's programs out there that last for weeks at a time, which I think are excellent. Um, but for us, we're going to start out with workshops and really let what we're teaching come out through the youth to promote what we're trying to do.
Okay, so what made you start this now? Is this an idea you've had for a while?
Um, yeah, I remember back in probably 2012, 2013, I had this thought. Um, but I think at that point, I could probably attest that I probably wasn't as bold or brave as I am now. And I felt, and I know that's totally a play on words and whatnot, but I really felt that at that point I wasn't prepared. Um, Maybe I didn't have the resources, maybe wasn't confident enough. There's a lot of different things going on during that time, but I recently had a few conversations with some people earlier this year, and a few of them were like, "Well, what's your plan?" And I was like, "I don't necessarily have one." They're like, "Well, why don't you make one?" And it was just something as simple as that from a few people who believed in me, who thought that there was a need, that made me literally sit down for about a month um, and get a ton of things together, reached out to a ton of people that I knew, and got the whole ball rolling with our name and with getting things out there and realizing there was so much I needed to do. So I just did it.
Good for you. Congratulations. So why is it so important for you to mentor youth? What is your message to youth?
I think that's a very good question. I think I want youth to know, and any teen to know, that they're important beyond measure. Their lives matter, that they have so much potential, and their opportunities to do so much in this world is beyond what they can even imagine, and lots of times beyond what lots of the adults around them can imagine. Um, you look at lots of people who have done some major things in life, and I bet you there wasn't everyone saying, "Oh yeah, you're going to do that." They just did it. And I think that's one of the coolest pieces to this program, that I want every teen that comes um, to know they're welcome, to know that they're able, to know that they can accomplish anything as long as they have grit and they pursue their dreams and they do the things they need to do, like get educated about things they're interested about. Okay, how do you do that? You go find somebody who knows about it, and give them these tools and these skills to help them realize that really anything's possible, regardless. I guess a huge part is regardless of your situation.
And what are the age group of the kids that we're talking?
Age groups for right now. So we're basically ranging between 11 and 14, or sorry, 11 and 18. Um, our workshops we're putting on right now are just for the young ladies. Right now, we're doing 11 to 14 for the workshop one, and workshop two is 15 to 18. And we plan to have some workshops for the young men starting in February of 2021.
Okay, yes, and I believe your husband Carl is kind of taking this on with you. And will he be more or less mentoring the young men while you mentor the young ladies?
We're going to kind of play it two ways. We have a bunch of different people that we're working with. I have a local counselor who's been working with me. I have another good friend from Tabor who basically is in basically design arts. She's been doing a ton with me. And I have a couple different like masters, people who are working on their masters in psychology, and who are very much into outdoors, who are other presenters. We also are working with someone from the University of Lethbridge who's one of the hammer throwers. So we have lots of different people that we're reaching out to. We also have someone who's a self-defense instructor. So our goal was to reach all different niches of all different people who have a bunch of different interests, because this isn't just a one size fits all.
Okay, so these would be like your keynote speakers and some other people that you're bringing in to help mentor the youth. So you were saying part of your business is the workshops that you're planning to provide. So tell us about these workshops. What can these kids expect?
A huge part of the workshops is basically to focus on the health and wellness of kids. teens and all those around them. So huge focus. We're going to be doing a lot of scenario type situations and things that they could encounter. We're going to have kind of planning and thoughts and just different interactive activities. We're also going to have a self-defense and just a lot of interaction. Obviously, COVID with all the COVID rules, but still to get these teens to know that there's other kids just like them, and that if they work together, they can accomplish so much.
And I think
So
that's
I
part
don't.
of, yeah, I think part of what youth are suffering from these days is isolation. I mean, now school is back in session, but I think that was a huge thing from March on through the summers. A lot of teens were really suffering with the isolation, and this is kind of a way to bring them together, right?
Yes, and that was a huge thing with the COVID thing. I've had people ask me why now, and for me, there's a lot of kids that need it. Um, so I'm taking a chance with doing this now, but I feel that it's super important, and all these kids, to me, all these teams are worth it. Um, there's a quote that I wanted to kind of just share with you that one of my friends brought up on my Instagram page, and I asked her, I said, what's some times when you felt you were bold and brave? She says, when we lived in our house, a quote that we had on our wall was basically, um, sometimes sometimes all you need is 20 seconds of courage. Now I was like, this sounds familiar, and there's actually a movie, and it was, I think we bought a zoo, and the whole idea with that is the actual quote is, sometimes all you need is 20 seconds of insane courage. Um, just literally 20 seconds where it's just embarrassing bravery. And the promise is that no matter what, greatness will come with it. And so when I thought about that, I think with these youth, even if they try something and it doesn't go well for them, they know they did it. They know they tried something. They know that maybe that's not going to work for them. But in the back of their mind, they're always like, I tried that. Maybe I didn't like it. Maybe it wasn't for me, but I tried. I didn't let something stop me. I think a huge thing when I was a teenager, I let a lot of stuff stop me. Maybe I was intimidated. Maybe I was discouraged. Maybe I felt I wasn't good enough. And I think in those ways, I can relate to a lot of kids and a lot of teens and their families, and just say, hey, why not try? You may not succeed, but then we can give you tools or help you build those tools that you need to succeed and to keep trying. Because even Michael Jordan, he failed and he's a superstar. So I look at all the different people who they failed in life, and those failures sometimes were the best things for them because it helped them to continue to move forward.
I think you're just really talking about positive role models that these kids are needing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a huge piece.
Yeah. So you have a couple of workshops coming up soon in October, right? One's October 16th to 17th. That's for girls ages 11 to 14. And then you have another one October 23rd to 24th for the young ladies 15 to 18. So where can people go for more information about this?
Okay, perfect. So our website is boldandbrave.ca. So we played with the N, so it's just boldandbrave.ca. And then we also are on Instagram under bold_and brave, and then Facebook bold space and space brave. So there's lots of information on all those places. Yeah, our email, like our website, has the most information for everybody.
Right. And you have COVID protocols in place as well for these workshops, right?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we wanted to make sure that, that everyone was safe, because our priority is the safety of everyone who attends as well as their families. But we figure this is something that is worth coming out to. And in turn, these teens will, I think, get a lot out of it.
Yeah. So what can they expect? They show up at the workshops and it's like guest speakers. Are they put into different scenarios and stuff? How are they taught?
Yeah. So basically, they'll be introduced to us. We'll do an introduction with everybody there. We'll do some kind of icebreakers so that everyone can kind of just get used to being there, because that's going to be your group for the 2 days. We have a keynote speaker that night who will then go over part of her situation, or her discussion will be kind of health mental health and goals. And then we'll kind of conclude for the night. The next day they'll come back. We'll start right into it with self-defense with one of our other guest, guest speakers. And then we'll do some lunch, scenario-based training afterwards with another keynote speaker and activity at the end. And so it's basically jam-packed, but good.
It does sound jam-packed. It actually sounds like a lot of fun and a great way to maybe connect with other youth and make some friends. You never know.
Yep, that's ultimately the hope. So eventually we hope to do some different events around the city where we kind of host them with other businesses. We're hoping to do one in November where people can get out with their families and do different things. And we just really want it to become a community-based business that everyone within the family can feel like they can reach out and be part of.
Well, excellent. I wish you all the best, Dana, with this brand new endeavor.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Looks like we are closely running out of time, but Dana Holland, founder of Bold and Brave, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at BCN. Thanks for watching.